So the last thing I saw when I drowned was the darkness of the space. And right there, immersed in that serenity, that peace, that silence, light. And it was a light that came from below, and it was able to illuminate the whole water surrounding me. It was soft, but it was at the same time able to illuminate everything. And then now it was also the sense like, now there is light. And then with that light came bubbles, and the bubbles were surrounded by light. And now imagine like, whoa, these bubbles with this childlike spirit. And I started to chase the bubbles. And it was by chasing the bubbles that I turned around, and it's when I saw my body. And my body's floating in the water. And when the moment I look at the body, it was incredible, because it was the sense of like, oh, that's my body. Like it was a normal thing. It was familiar. Like I didn't feel shocked or afraid.
Welcome to What's Death Got to Do With It, our podcast here on the Near Death Network on YouTube. We appreciate you viewing our videos, like, sharing, and subscribing them, because what we do every week is we examine experiencer stories, but also academicians and clinicians in the field to try and get a well-rounded, comprehensive look at these amazing experiences and then how they can serve you, the viewing public, going forward who have not had them. So it's my pleasure to bring in Dr. Ingrid Honkala from her dwelling in Mississippi. And Ingrid, I tell you what, you and I have kind of conversed over the years with people like Jeff Olson and Barbara Bartolome and people in the near-death space, rather, as it were. And it's really good to finally get a chance to talk to you. What are you doing now before we get into the chronology of your story? Are you actively promoting more of the near-death experience material, or are you still in marine biology, or a combination of both?
No, I've been very, very, very busy. But when I say no, is that I'm not working in the field of marine sciences anymore. That's a decision I took a couple of years ago when my first book became like a success, and I started to get called and invited to give talks and workshops and retreats and this whole thing. I guess people are thirsty to know what happened. I mean, all of us are going to die eventually, Mark. So it's like, how can we remove that fear? How can we know more? What happens when we're out there? So I started to get many invitations, and then the call for service was so strong that I just felt, I already had been dedicated 30 years to work in science, and if it was the moment of shifting, changing, although my scientific side is always with me when trying to understand things at levels that need to be explained from the logic, from the analytic part, from the spiritual part. So it's more a merging. It's beautiful because there's that merging. But yeah, nowadays I'm very dedicated to write, to talk, to share, to service, to do one-on-one sessions. I do just anything out there. And I have just finished writing. We're writing 2 books. One is a children book collection. We're working with one of my sisters, my youngest sister. And then I finished writing my second, let's call it adult book, called Dying to See the Light. And it's actually, the title is Dying to See the Light, a scientist's guide to reawakening without nearly dying.
Well, I think it's so important for you to have the scientific background, because a lot of people, as you know, in this field of near-death experiences won't give themselves the license to really buy into the experience and the continuation of consciousness unless there's a delineation like you make between science and spirituality. They're not mutually exclusive. And the way that you marry them together, I think, is very important going forward for all of the people who have always wanted to say, yeah, I'd like to believe that, but science doesn't say anything about it. So with yourself and other clinicians, Sam Parnia, Pim von Lommel, Bruce Grayson, who's an academician, Dr. Eben Alexander. I mean, there are many examples now of where medicine is complementing and not opposing spirituality.
Yes.
So kudos to you for that.
Thank you. Oh, yes, it's been amazing. I have had the chance to meet a lot of the people working with the scientific part of it, with the evidence, with the medical. I had the chance to meet Pim von Lommel last year, and we had such incredible conversations because it was now, let's go even deeper and deeper in how these experiences are from not just this. The beautiful thing about this, Mark, is that we have the written knowledge, we have the collection of data, but the people with experiences. So it's like you can talk from knowledge and you can talk, or let's call it from the knowledge that come from collecting data and processing that data, and the knowledge that come from knowing, from really
Correct.
being there. So
yeah, I think that merging is incredibly important. And we'll talk about it throughout the course of this podcast. But let's start the beginning. You were one of the rare, I think there's 10 to 14% of individuals experience near death as a child. And you were just 3 years old. You had 3 NDEs, but let's start with the first one. You're back in the backyard with your sister. You decide to sneak out there and play catch in a big basin that you had water in, correct, to wash your clothes. And then take us through what happened then.
Yeah, from there, not listening, because when they tell you don't do that, that's what you have to do when you're a little child. So yeah, playing catch there, I lost my balance and fell in the tank. And people have the misconception that because I come from Colombia, I come from hot weather country, but Bogota's high up in the Andes. And why I want to mention this, because it's a very important point describing that the water in this tank was frigid cold. It had to be about maybe 30, 40 degrees Fahrenheit. And it's important because we don't know how long I was under the water. But being the water cold was what helped the body to survive. And I fell in this tank, and that first feeling, Mark, was the water, that frigid water. So just right there, it was that impact of that water. And after that, it came the feeling of why I cannot breathe. Imagine the terror. I have never been in a pool. I never have had the head under the water. So I didn't know that if you fall in the water, you drown. And all these points are important because people usually ask, how can you remember this if you were so young? I was about to just be 3 years old. So like, come on, you were so young. But I'm like, first, I always like to mention the word contrast. How can I forget the frigid water? How can I forget the horror of drowning? And how can I forget what comes after? So for me, in a way, it's like, it's impossible actually to forget what happened. After that, I am in this state of absolute terror. Imagine what is to drown. I just say to people, just the need for air is something.
Yeah, that would be terrifying.
Yes, and then I can feel my heart pounding in my chest. I can hear my heart in my head with that horror. And suddenly, Mark, it came what I would just describe as a miracle, going from that state of terror to peace.
Bliss
And peace and serenity and calmness. And I didn't know what happened. I just knew that one moment I was needing to get out of the tank, and the next moment I'm just not needing to go anywhere, breathe any air, do anything. I'm just in peace. And then when this happened, it was that sense of like, that it came with freedom. And it came also with something really, really important too. These are these contrasts that I mentioned. When I was hearing my heart pounding in my head, it was like a loud drum. And when I went into peace, silence. But is that profound silence that I call the silence behind the silence? Is so profound that even after this experience, Mark, I wanted to go back to that silence. And I would hide in under the bed, under the sheets, in the closets. I didn't know how to get that silence.
To get back, yeah.
Yeah. The other contrast is that this tank was a very dark space. It was entirely made of cement. There was a roof. It was early in the morning. So the last thing I saw when I drowned was the darkness of the space. And right there, immersed in that serenity, that peace, that silence, light. And it was a light that came from below, and it was able to illuminate the whole water surrounding me. It was soft, but it was at the same time able to illuminate everything. And then now it was also the sense like, oh, now there is light. And then with that light came bubbles, and the bubbles were surrounded by light. And now imagine like, whoa, these bubbles with this childlike spirit. And I started to chase the bubbles. And it was by chasing the bubbles that I turned around, and it's when I saw my body. And my body's floating in the water. And when the moment I look at the body, it was incredible, because it was the sense of like, oh, that's my body. Like it was a normal thing. It was familiar. Like I didn't feel shocked or afraid. Like, oh yeah, that's my body.
So there was no sense of panic.
No. The only thing that I have to tell you that probably shocked me and that I kept with me for the rest of my days was the look in the eyes. You know, I don't know, you've seen that when they show a body that is in the water, somebody drowned, the eyes are
right,
open.
Wide open.
Yeah, and that's what shocked me. The eyes were open, but what shocked me, it wasn't just the eyes themselves. Is, you know how we say that the eyes are like the window of the soul?
Correct.
The eyes were empty, Mark. It's like empty. It was like the feeling of like, whoa, that body is just a shell. So it was very easy for me to make the next decision. I was born as a very sick child. And this is the other very important contrast in this whole experience. And I didn't know what was to be well. I didn't know any other feeling other than being sick. I was born with respiratory problems. And when now I am in the state of absolute well-being, and I look at the body, I'm like, well, I'm not going to go back there. And it was so easy. It was like, I'm not going back to that body. And I turned around and I left it behind. And the moment I turned around, I started to see flowers. And these flowers were blooming from nowhere. And these flowers have to be, I don't know, so big. Even the sense of dimension disappeared when these flowers picked me up.
Huh.
And now I'm being carried. Oh, and I'm like completely relaxed. Like, you know, like lying on these flowers, like, wow, this is so good. And nothing to worry, nowhere to go, nothing to care about. And then I'm being like carried, like in a forward direction. And all I could see was like, I remember the whole space was dark, but again, it was that light. So there was always light that was with me. And then I'm being carried in the flowers when the next thing that was just so shocking happened. And is that suddenly, like in a blink, Mark, I am in the maid's room. It was this lady that's supposed to be taking care of us, but she was completely lost in her radio, listening to soap operas.
Yeah, so she had no idea that you guys were in the tank.
No idea. And then I'm looking at her from above, like if I'm floating in the ceiling. And then I'm like, oh, that's Maria. And nothing happened. She's completely unaware. So from there, in another blink, I appear floating above my mom. My mom had left early in the morning and she was walking to her bus stop. And her bus stop, I have to tell you, was like, if you're walking as like a good rhythm, it had to be probably 10 minutes away.
Mm-hmm.
And she was close to there when I'm floating above her. And I have to tell you, this next part of the story is something that is clear validation, is validation of what happened to Ingrid is real, really happened. And second, I think it blows everybody's minds away, because the moment I'm floating above my mom and I looked at her and I said, "Oh, that's mom." She stopped, Mark. She didn't even hesitate. She stopped and she knew something is happening at home with one of my daughters. And she turned around and started to run back home. And I have to give you a little backstory here, because what makes it even more impressive is that my mom that day was going to her first day of a new job.
Mm.
When you're going to go to your new job, you're not going to start thinking anything. Your mind is so focused, you're even kind of nervous about it.
Right.
You would not listen to anything else. But this call was so intense that my mom had to turn.
Do you feel, just from your perspective, that's more of a frequency thing now that because you guys were connected so significantly with your relationship, that you were on the same bandwidth as her and she picked up your signal and hightailed it back to you? And you said she does CPR, right? She was able to help revive you, correct?
Yeah, yes. You're like saying something that barely nobody ever talk about, which is the part of vibration. Yes, because look what happened with the lady, no connection. She just said it. Why she couldn't hear? She was only a few feet away. She couldn't hear. She couldn't feel nothing. My mom, who was, I don't know how many, 9-8 minutes away from home, she's the one that felt it. So that was one of the teachings I came to bring about this experience, the power of love, the power of connection. Look at how love don't have barriers. Look at what happened when you're vibrating in that same vibration of love. Connection happened and she got home. So once she's running in the direction of the house, and I looked at her and I'm like, "Oh, that's mom running." I mean, like, I wonder where she's running. And then I got distracted because at the end of the road, there was a dog. And then now I felt the desire to be with the dog. So forgot about my mom. And now I'm with the dog. And then I saw a park. And the moment I saw the park and felt the desire, I am in the park. So now imagine all this idea that we have about time and space gone. And I could be anywhere, anytime. So I'm having a blast playing, when suddenly, Mark, in just another blink like that, I entered into a realm that was made of pure, intense, shiny white light. And when I entered in this realm, it was the first time in almost my 3 years of life that I felt that I was home. See, I was having
so many people say that.
Oh, and what is home? Oh, what feels familiar, what feels embracive, what feels like it's holding you, like, oh, this is my home. And then that feeling of home came with deeper knowing of who I was. And until this moment, I wasn't thinking who I am and just having fun. And then it's when, although I had seen the body in the water, I didn't have the clear realization that I wasn't that. And it's when I realized, whoa, I'm not that. I am this. And what is this? I am a being of light. And I was having starting to feel this sense of feeling that I was connected with everything. that I was not just this individual, independent being. I was connected, but I was still having a sense of self. But even this sense of self, Mark, for me, disappeared when I went into the next stage, and is what I call nothingness. And some people call it non-self or emptiness. But when I say nothingness, people get kind of afraid. So I want to explain a little bit what nothingness meant for me. But I think this is the part of the experience which is the most difficult to explain. So I'd like to give an analogy. So imagine that there is a stadium, and in the middle of a stadium, there's a little box. And all I knew about myself was that little box. And suddenly the box opens up. So it's nothing, because it's nothing that I thought I was. But at the same time, wholeness, totality, knowing like I'm not this little tiny thing, I'm all of that. And that all of that is now the part that is so hard to explain, because there's no words, there's no meaning, there's no description. There wasn't color of movement or sensation. It was just, maybe if there's words I could use, which I've been trying to carve through the years after reading, understanding, going deeper, using all the knowledge that is available, I could use the word pure presence, and probably just the word absolute consciousness. It's just pure presence. And at that moment, it was complete and full inner connection and wholeness. And if there's any emotion I could use, Mark, it will be, you already mentioned it before, it will be bliss. Just bliss in being. And then when I'm in this state of beingness, my mom finally arrived home. And this is the other thing. She knew exactly where to go. And she directed herself to the back of the house. She would go to a bedroom, wherever else, then the body cannot hold that long. And she went to the back. And my oldest sister, the one playing with me, she was trying to get me out of the water. Mm-hmm. People say, why didn't she call the maid? Because we did not supposed to be playing there. So we didn't want to, she didn't want to be scolded. So she's trying to get me out. She couldn't reach me. She sees my mom and she's like, Mom, Ingrid is there and I cannot get her. My mom jumped in the water. She got me out and I was just like a raggedy doll, no pulse, no breathing, all blue. And then my mom that you mentioned, she knew CPR for children because she worked with children and she worked especially with children with disabilities. And then whatever she was taught that back then, she did to me. And I didn't feel, Mark, anything she was doing. I was completely disconnected from this body. And then it came the moment where the only thing I felt was like if I had jumped from the tallest building in the world and there was nothing I could do to stop this. But I resisted. That's why I use the word, there was nothing I could do because I was like, no. And I cannot stop this fall. And I'm being like vacuumed back, like sucked back. And I'm like, and I felt it when I went back into, if I mention my analogy, when I went back from this state of wholeness to the little box. And I knew it because I felt the sense of discomfort, the sense of that wholeness, that lack of freedom. Now I'm back in this body and I felt the sickness of the body. And I was very, very angry.
Well, yeah, I know you talked about that coming back and to have that euphoric feeling and then to be back in density and then where nobody really can articulate what you're, or actually understand what you're trying to articulate, rather. It had to be extremely frustrating. And I know in talking to Jacob Cooper in one of our podcasts a couple of weeks ago, he also had his NDE at age 3. So I asked him, and I'll ask you about a life review, because a life review often accompanies a near-death experience. He said in his instance that even though chronology, he was only 3, he felt like he was the all of all. So he, from a comprehensive overview standpoint, the oversoul, that is a common term in spiritual metaphysicians lexicon, it kind of directed his thought. But he said there was a separation, so he did view things from the eyes of a 3-year-old simultaneously. Was that what happened to you as well?
You know, incredibly, this is, we talked with him in the past, because both of us having near-death experiences at 3 years old is just so amazing to be able to find somebody to share these kind of these experiences. And for me, it happened that it was the sense that I lost my sense of individuality. So when I came back here, it was very hard, because when I would look at my parents, I would feel the sense of, why do I have to listen to you? I have experienced oneness. I have experienced that, let's call it like the sense of like fusion with the whole. So now I will look at them and I just felt them as my equal. Why do I have to listen to you? And I became very rebellious. And, you know, it took many, many, many years, Mark, to understand how I could, still be an individual soul if I was merged with the divine, with the whole. Because it was that part of like, I am actually a separate individual or I am not. It was very, very hard to comprehend these things. It took me many years. And, you know, I met this teacher, this yogi teacher from India, and she told me something really interesting. She said, like, Ingrid, imagine that, of course, I didn't know the concept of God. I didn't know the concept of love. I was too little to know these concepts. Later on time is when I realized that was pure and absolute embracive love, what I felt. That's why we call it home. And that union with the divine is what I understood. I was embraced by God because I felt that presence. That's why it's so hard to put it in words. What is it? It was this presence. And it was a presence that I felt the entire time. But now it get the more I went deeper into the knowing who I truly was, the more embracive it was. So there was a moment that I said to this yogi teacher, I told her, but I merged. I completely melted in the arms of God. And she said, but you're still an individual. So how is that? Then is when she said, imagine a little baby, and that the little baby is being held in the arms of the mom and the dad, or the dad. And the baby is so cozy, so being loved that you completely forget who you are. And you dissolve in the arms of the mother and the father. So you, in reality, of course, at the level of the souls, we're all consciousness. But we are already that spark that I like to put a drawing of the sun and the rays of the sun. Each one of us is that emanation of source itself. So is that recognition that we always stay connected. So the merging is that sense like, oh, we will never got separated. I'm connected to God, but at the same time, God has given me the chance to have my own eternal experience as a soul. So that was what happened. I just completely remember that connection with our, let's call it Father, Mother in heaven. Some call it source, some call it divine, some call it the light of consciousness, whatever we want to call it. But that's just, and bringing it to words, bringing it to here, it was impossible. So when I was little, I was very frustrated because what happened, Mark, I also look at myself and I would come to my mom crying and telling her, you don't understand, I am not this. I am not this child. I am not a child. So I never felt like a child again. But I didn't have the language because, again, the body has the age that it had, even though internally I had all this knowledge, I could not express it. So imagine the limitations. And I would just cry, and I would just almost pull my hair and scratch my face. Mom, you don't understand. I am not this. What my mom could say, there was no knowledge about this in the early 70s. There was
Right.
nothing to really my mom, other than she worked with children with challenges, with disabilities. She could put all her knowledge to help me and to try to work with me in whatever was happening with me at the moment. This is the other thing, Mar. I will look at other children and I could not relate, because I will look at them and say, what is happening to these people? They don't know anything.
Right.
And to prove that this child, there was something else, that because nobody understood that there had been an experience. No, I didn't have the word, nobody understood, but there was some validation that also came with this. I am about to be only 3 years old, and after the experience, they started to realize pretty quick that I could read. Now I could write. I could develop mathematical problems. I could put together complex puzzles. I could paint. What happened is that, children don't develop the abstract mind until they are about 5, 7, and forward. I already came back with it. That's why I could put together puzzles, numbers, and that's been the work I did for science, for NASA. I'm able to work with matrices of enormous amounts of numbers, because I came back with that ability. And later, when I went to school, when I was learning things, I would just be like, the sense like, I'm not learning anything, I'm just remembering. So look, that is all that proves, Mark, that we are eternal beings. This is not the first time we're here, and this is not the first time we have had certain experience. We already carry with us all this knowledge.
Yeah, let me just, I can make this point while I'm thinking of it. Being a scientist, and now the progression of multi-dimensional frequency, the ability to see us being simultaneous instead of linear, because we look at all time as linear in a 3D construct, right? That's our frame of reference. But like you said, we have the comprehensive knowledge of the universe that resides in us. But when we incarnate, we have the veil pulled and we come down and we have our marching orders that we've agreed to, in my opinion. We sit but we're given sovereignty. We can still exercise sovereignty, right? Unless you don't accept it. If I say, let's go rob a bank, and you go, okay, I'm going with you. Well, you agreed, but you could say, no, we're not going to do it. That's your ability to say no. When you look at this now, so do you think you kind of hid in science? Because you talked about reintegration being very difficult for young children, like 30 to 45 years. And so you immersed yourself in the intellectual pursuits of your degrees. And how did you reconcile that with what you knew internally in your heart of hearts?
It was all a process. And thankfully, the story just goes and goes, Mark, in which I had help, actually. So what happened is when I was in the worst of the moments where, like, I'm throwing these tantrums, I stopped eating, I could eat. The help that I needed came in also remarkable ways, because you're mentioning we're multidimensional beings. We having access to all levels of consciousness. And for me, I always kept saying, because people also say, how can you remember blah? I said, it's like the door for me never closed. It's like the door for me never closed. So it's not like I had my near-death experience and voila, that's it. No, I kept having experiences. And later in my life, I got the insight of course, Ingrid, the door never closed, because there is no door. What we call consciousness, the kingdom of heaven, God, source, all the dimensions are always here. Everything is here and now. But like you say, where is your focus of attention? Depending of what we have put in front of us. We close those doors because conditioning, beliefs, whatever it is, then now we have to peel those layers. For me, the layers were gone. And what happened is I started to have out-of-body experiences right after. And then in this out-of-body, I will go back to the realm of the light. This was already, the access was there. And then I started to meet what I call beings of light, which, as we have beings that are dense like us, there's beings at all different levels of reality too, manifested beings. And then people call them angels, people call them ascended masters, whatever, there's all tons of different beings. And I could sit here with you, Mark, telling you all the beings I have met is amazing. And it will be a very long podcast, but it's been incredible. I guess that's why I've been writing books about that. And then now I started to receive teachings from these beings to clarify things in my mind. The first time that I realized that it was a being, that's why I call it being of light, is because one of these beings shining in gold shaped itself into human form. Mm. And people nowadays, you hear a lot the word orbs or whatever, like people are seeing more because the veil is being removed from many people, and so you can access. And now I started to see them when I was 3, and one of these beings touched me, and I'm like, whoa, you are a being of light. Just like I realized myself when I died. And then I was sleeping a lot because I wanted to have access to these beings. And then the way that things balance is one day I'm taking a shower, and suddenly I see one of these beings shining in the bathroom, but now with a blue light, different frequency, and it was shining blue. And from there, I started to feel the sense of eating and the sense of being here, because up to that moment, I wanted to go back home. It was very hard. And then one day when I'm like, I was still throwing these big tantrums more because I didn't feel the connection here. And then one night they're calling me for dinner. And then when they're calling Ingrid, I'm like, I feel aggravated when people call me Ingrid. And then the lady came, I'm calling you for dinner, Ingrid. And I said, don't call me like that. That's not my name. And it's when the lady said, how should I call you? What is your name? And I said, I do not need one. So that very night was, up to that moment, I could see the beings of light. I could feel their presence. I could smell them. Smell of perfume was, oh my God, it's incredible. And then for the first time, I started to hear. And it's when I hear the voice, very, very incredible, very compassionate, that says it's going to take time for them to understand that names are not needed in the realm of the light. And that's why for me, I've never really assigned names to all the beings I have met, because I had the clear realization in the realm of the light, labels are not needed. They are needed here, yes, for our human experience. So I came to now make sense of that too. Oh, I get it. I understand why I don't need a name, but I understand now why I need it too. So things started to become clear, and they said to me that it was best not to share because people were not going to understand. But imagine, Mark, I'm a child. I'm like, what is not to understand? What? What is happening to these people? And they just, the clarity came pretty soon. Like, they don't get it. And then the other thing was like, there's going to be people in your path to help you and to guide you. And I'm taking too long to answer your question because there was a process to get to where I am today. And two very important people came to my life to make this process possible. The first one was my mom, who was the person that validated that what I was seeing was real. And it was through some paintings I was doing in school. And it's when they realized, she's really seeing things. And then not just beings of light, but auras. And then is when my mom at school, she's like, let's just not talk about this in school. And then on the way home, she said to me, I believe you, because she also could see things that others could not see.
Mm-hmm.
So she could see what we call spirits since she was a little child.
Mm-hmm.
Later, when I was 6, I started to see spirits too. If that's something we could talk about or not, but there's another complete story about that. But the other person that was very, very important in my life, which was now that brought me to the path I needed to go to, was my mother. My grandmother brought me to the path of spirituality. Otherwise, Mark, it would have been another experience. See, it's like we humans are full of experiences. So it would have been another experience that maybe I would have never able to really explain or comprehend, or I don't know what would have happened, but my grandmother came to my life and she brought the depthness of it. She's like, she started to explain to me. She was the one that talked to me about consciousness, that talked to me. So spirituality derived from there. And even up to this point, I wanted to know everything. So science for me also, it was there. You know, I also became a professional scuba diver. I wanted to know the depthness of everything. And people ask me, how could you become a marine scientist if you drown? You should be afraid of water. And I said, no, you have to understand this with different eyes. Drowning brought me to see the light. Mm. So more than the trauma, I wanted to go back there. How can I go to that place consciously? And that's what my grandmother, and from that point on, the path was like how I understand what happened to me in a deeper way.
Well, didn't she expose you to Rosicrucianism, the Bhagavad Gita, Yogananda, and you even met with Dalai Lama in your life, correct?
Yes, I spent 7 days with him in Dharamsala, India, receiving his teachings. Yeah, so yeah, thanks to I've met many spiritual teachers. I have met, the path has been incredible just because my grandmother opened that door for me. So I would say it was the perfect two people to be guided to. My mother, she taught me prayer, and my grandmother taught me meditation. I've been meditating since I was a little child. So it was like the full combination. But that was incredible. What was hard, Mark, was to live the life of a regular person, going to school, because at school I was ostracized. There was no programs for children like me in the schools. So even by the teachers, I was treated differently. So that, even though there was many beautiful gifts, there was also many burdens because I did not fit in. I did not belong to, I felt like I don't belong. I am just an extraterrestrial. I'm just an ET in this world. So yeah, it was in the hands of my mom and my grandmother to keep me going. Yeah.
Well, and you talked about how challenging it was. I mean, you didn't, even though you had exposure to reality on a consciousness level that a lot of people don't get to experience if we don't have that transcendent experience that you've had 3 times now. But it doesn't mean it's all over. It doesn't mean it's nirvana, right? You had to go through the steps mechanically. You got your degree, you were a professional. And then you talk about the dark night of the soul in 2010. It brings you to that moment. What was that like, and what catapulted you out of that abyss into the work that you're doing now?
You know, Mark, for like so many years after my first NDE, my second one at 24, imagine if in the first one I felt the sense of going home. Then my grandma and my mom get me out of that. At 24, I had the second one and I was home again. Like, okay, I'm home and I'm back again. So I suffered all my life with this deep depression. Although I became a very successful scientist, I was, imagine, I was with this level of intelligence, I did incredible in college. I became a scientist. I worked for organizations like I worked for this amazing big project with mangroves, with the Colombian, the Ministry of Environment in Colombia. I worked for the Colombian Navy, for NASA, for the US Navy. I was very successful in my career, which actually, if you think about it, I had to pick a career that was doing what to me? Grounding me. See, look at the balance. Everything talks about balance too. And it was picking the right thing so I could kind of be here with my feet in this world. So I picked this career and I was successful, many things, but inside me, I was always nostalgic. Imagine, it's when you are homesick. This homesickness was enormous because it's the homesickness of wanting to leave this world. But why wouldn't I leave? Because I thought about that many, many times.
Did you ever think about taking your own life?
Oh, yes. But you know what kept me here, Mark, that when you have reached a state of consciousness that is so elevated, and when you've been in that state of connection, it was unbearable to me to make anybody suffer. I could not think for a second that taking my life could make anybody suffer. See, you lose that sense that you become more it's this selflessness. You can, now your life don't belong to you only. So I could not think about my mom suffering. I could not think about my parents, about my sisters, the suffering I would cause to others if I would take my life. So that kept me here. And then, but I reached a moment when you talk about the dark night of the soul that I was already living here in the US. I've done my PhD, but through all those years, to try to belong and to try to be here, I disconnected from the truth that I was. It was like, how can I just be normal? I wanted to be normal. And I spent many, many years of let's just be normal, when that other world is right here. Like if you have, people ask how this is like, it's like if you have TV, all the waves of radio, internet, everything is here and you have access to it, but you learn to close all the channels so you don't access them. And then that's what I was doing. And it's a big effort. And for many years I tried, but I disconnected. And the more I put my eyes in the outer, the more empty I felt in the inner. And then this success in the outer turned into an abyss inside. And there was a moment that my husband traveled a lot and I was lying next to my little 3-year-old baby who I adore with my entire being. So even that was successful as a mom, but I was like, I cannot be here anymore. And then the little tiny thought crossed my mind, Mark, of what about I died and take him with me? Because how can I leave my son without a mom? And when that thought came to my mind, I'm like, whoa, I lost it. It's when that was the dark night of the deepest one that I experienced when I thought about taking my life and living with
well,
myself.
because you just related how important your mother was to you. And so you're that important to him. So your selflessness probably took over and said, no, that's not an option. We can't do that.
Yes.
So I'm sure that helped you catalyze your decision and be able to move back in a direction that is a balance. Like you said, your legitimacy in academia gives you even more credibility with people who may poo-poo this. Oh yeah, near-death experience. These people are all whack. They're crazy. It's hypoxia. It's a lack of oxygen to the brain. These are manifestations that can be explained by science. No, there's veridical evidence now, like you said, with von Lommel and Grayson and Parnia and all the great researchers, Dr. Jeffrey Long, all of the individuals collectively have put a body of work together that support what you do as an academician and a practicing scientist, but also as summa cum laude in life, because you've been there and back 3 times. You can help extol to those people like myself and our viewers just what it's like there and how to live in balance. How do you reconcile that? It must be very difficult to know, okay, nirvana's right here and I'm right here. How do you travel back and forth without just being, I want to go there completely?
You know, I for this I have to bring, you know, the full circle into me with my last near-death experience. So I think it's very important to bring this one up for that question. I kept it, even though like I had that big awakening when I was about in 2010 that you mentioned, which happened after that dark night of the soul, because with that clarity, I said, okay, stop right there. And then, things came again to balance. And a lot happened after that. I met the right people, the right guidance, and I was able to pull out of that. I had a big awakening at that time, the realization of like, wow, nothing ever happened to me. It happened for me. I have the realization of like, I am this powerful being, and my only truth and truth is the truth that is happening now. The rest is all in my head, and I can choose what to do with it. It empowered me, and I had a big realization of forgiveness. I said, if nothing ever happened to me but for me, I entered into the state of gratitude. I'm like, wow, it brought me to this clarity, to this understanding, to this openness. And I just realized, if everything is happening for me, then what is to forgive? So I could say that there was nothing to forgive, or everything was forgiven. So from that point on, I started to live in a different kind of a state of consciousness, more elevated. But that sense of like wanting to go home kept knocking the door. And 3 years ago, when I had my last near-death experience, was actually, again, there's a story to get there, but I needed a surgery. And I received like a warning before this whole thing. It was like more like a warning was the words that were telling me if I had the trust. I received the word that said, do you trust me? And the moment I say yes, a whole new, let's call it, connection also with higher and higher levels of consciousness happened to me. And in that knowing that I had to, it was a surgery I didn't want to have. I thought I could go without this surgery, but everything brought me to have it. And with these, the words of, do you trust me? So before getting the surgery, I met the doctor right there before getting into the room. And I said to her, something is going to happen. You have to monitor my blood pressure closely. So I already have the knowing that something was going to happen in the surgery. And I said to her, you have to. And the lady that was so on it that she called the anesthesiologists, they knew they had to pay attention. She decided to listen to me. This is incredible, because that is not always the case with the doctors. And then through the procedure, just as I said, my blood pressure dropped. I went into hypothermia and I was out. And then I entered directly into the light more. Like, you know, when you have had more than one near-death experience, because I have heard from other people that have had near-death experiences, like, cut with the chase. You don't need all this other stuff. Right in the light.
You're just back.
You're just back there. And I'm like, home. And then when I am there, this is the first time from all the experiences that I heard, I was given the choice if I wanted to stay or I wanted to come back. And, you know, I have heard many cases in which people are, during the near-death experiences, they're told, no, you have to go back. It's not your time.
Right.
No, I was asked, I was given the choice. And then the moment I heard you want to stay, I was like, of course I want to stay. I've been wanting to come home for all my life. Like, what kind of question is this? Of course I want to stay. But when I heard, oh, and I have to say to you, because you may think, what happened to your son, your husband? I mean, like, what? You're not thinking about the people you love? This is so beautiful, Mark. And it was hard to share this with my family later, because what happened? Detachment. I was completely detached, but not detached because of lack of connection or love, detached because of knowing that the plan of God is perfect.
It's always perfect.
It's perfect, Mark. I was like, see the big picture. And I'm like, wow, if this isn't to happen, this is to happen. I just saw perfection. So there was nothing to argue about. And then, but the moment I heard, oh, you want to go back, now is the payoff of all my years of meditation and presence and awareness, because at that moment I asked, wait a minute, is this a test? I said, because if you, God, if your presence is absolutely everywhere, if you're always there, if source is always present, and absolutely everything is a manifestation of consciousness. So where is here and where is there?
They're both here.
There is no here and there is no there. We just even talked about that before, Mark. We're multidimensional beings. Everything is here and now. Is where, if you were a radio, is where is your dial in this radio and where's your antenna? That's it. So at that moment, I just know, like, oh, everything is here and now, but that with complete experience. And then is when I also had the clarity of, you know, what temptation is. Mm-hmm. Because temptation, and I understood it from my other near-death experiences. I'm like, oh, and every time I wanted to leave. Why? Because the ego likes comfort. Mm. Oh, if I'm already home, why do I want to experience all this stuff? Oh, no, you just want comfort. It doesn't want to be challenged. It doesn't want to be tested.
Right.
Oh, so at that moment, the only thought that crossed my mind was, keep me where I can serve you the most. Keep me where I can serve God the most. And it's when now the sense of like, oh, my family, my son, my husband, my purpose on earth, all the stuff pull me down like an anchor. You need that. See, and you ask me, how can I reconcile? Is the moment when I realize I just need to be. I just need to be. There's nothing, there's no door to close or up. It's just need to be. And then now it's when I realize home is not a place. It's a state of being. It's not about near death. It's about near life. How I live my life to the fullest. So in this aspect of beingness, when I was 10 years old, in 2010, when I was still working for NASA, and I had that big awakening, and now even more powerful realizations is like, I remember when I asked, what can I do or what can I say to these people so they can see that they're more than they know they are? And it's when I received this clear insight, this message that says, do or say nothing. The light of your awareness is all they need. The most important thing from all this process, Mark, is the part of be. Be that, be the home, be the space, be the presence, be that light. What is to be the light? Be the values that connect you, be the values that make you that great divine being that you are, a being of goodness. So it's like, say or do nothing, be. And from that state of being, the doing and the saying will come.
Well, and I think, for many years I've studied a discipline that talks about the sense that we put out into in the ether, right? In our immediate sense of influence is like when we walked into a room and our parents were fighting when we were kids and they tried to act like nothing was going on, but we knew there was a palpable feeling in the air because that sense, that frequency was still there. It was still hanging in the room. So what you're saying is you come back and you convey that sense of being, that authentic sense of being that we all have at our core, to actually model that. And I think it's so important for you, Ingrid, and I really appreciate you taking the time to sit and visit with us, because you have the best of both worlds. You have the experience of the spirituality and the nexus point of connection to God/consciousness on multiple occasions. So you're the perfect scientist. You replicated the experience, but you're also a scientist. So those people who are more linear and wouldn't give themselves a license to listen to this hooey metaphysics, spiritual gobbledygook, have to give you your due because you embrace both sides of the coin. If we could just wrap up, and I ask everybody to do this on every podcast, can you give some of what you think are salient tips for those of us who won't have a near-death experience? How to conduct ourselves in life to have a more joyous and navigable life. And then if you could also give us your contact information for people who want to get a hold of you, we would really appreciate it.
Yes, so these questions are beautiful, because if I would give any kind of recommendation, is live a life where you can learn to calm your mind. When you're in a room full of noise, how are you supposed to listen to anything? And when that noise is reduced or gone, you can hear. And now you can really share all that inside and all that in depth that is always there for us. And I always share two main things of how to live that life of connection and high vibrational frequency. Clear your mind and live a life of gratitude. Gratitude is one of the highest vibrational frequencies there are. People say, but what do you mean is not love? And I said, no, but look, what are the things that make you feel grateful? The things that make you feel what? Great. What are the things that make you feel great? The things that you love. So love and gratitude are synonyms. So you have to go to that place of really appreciating deeply from your heart. And then you connect with love. The beings of light said to me, Ingrid, imagine if every human being would realize, would know that for you to exist, Mark, trillions and trillions and trillions of subatomic particles have to be in agreement. You are a divine intention. So imagine that we could live a life and we realize, wow, all this is possible because trillions of subatomic particles are agreeing to be all this. So
it's magical, isn't it?
It's magical. Live a life where you have that awareness. Live a life of presence, live a life of gratitude. And then you are vibrating high. So and that's the vibration that you will meet. Love life and life will love you back.
Mm-hmm.
It's all a matter of vibration. So that's one of the things I always like to share. Learn to calm your mind and learn to live a life where you connect with the vibration of gratitude or love through gratitude. And
well, go ahead. I was just going to say a quick follow-up to that. So if you look at the world stage now, it looks like everything's gone to hell in a handbasket, right? I mean, you have people just, constantly at each other's throats. If you're left, you hate the right. If you're right, you hate the left. If you're, an international citizen, you think that we're, idiots over here because we're fighting with one another. But then we look at the rest of the world in a different lens as well. How do you tune all that white noise out? Do you go back to what you were saying, just try to isolate and use some type of meditative stance?
This is really, I love this question, and it brings me to another thing, because another teaching that I receive is like, never think in terms of the collective. When you think in terms of the collective, you disempower yourself. So I give you a quick analogy. Imagine that you have a castle, and the castle is a complete mess. Think that the castle is the world. You could have all the good intention to want to fix this castle in one morning, in one day, in 1 week, but you're talking about years of work. It's a castle. So the moment you think about, I'm going to fix this now, you're done. You're tired already. You're disempowered. You cannot do anything. So what you have to do, Mark, you have to use that coming of the mind, connecting with inner wisdom, pausing and say, I'm going to start room by room. And in starting room by room, you go to the kitchen. Oh God, not even the kitchen is too much. What about this table? You have to use your discernment. You have to use your wisdom. And then now you go clear this little corner here, and it's like, whoa, I did it. It looks good. Let's call the neighbor. Oh, you did good job, Ingrid. How can I do this? Mm-hmm. See, so the work is not like waste of your energy thinking about the collective, but is what Gandhi said, be the world, be the change you want to see in the world. This is a truth statement. It's like, be that change you want to be in the community, in your home, with your family, with your own self. Start here. Start with your own kitchen. Start with your own little corner in the table in the kitchen.
Right.
If the kitchen is too much, be the change you want to see in the world. Be the peace, be the love. How you teach love to your children, like we just mentioned before, by being it. Be the virtues, be the representation of that. And from there, look, the podcast happened, the book happened, the talk happened, one person at a time. So that's why I love this picture where there's like a Buddha sitting in the middle with one candle. And that candle illuminates another. And from there, one awakened being can serve as the light in the awakening of thousands more. So I guide people, be the light. Before we go with the next mark, when I ask the beings of light, people always ask me, what is purpose and what is mission? The beings of light said to me, your only true purpose, Mark, is to remember that you are the light of consciousness. And that light of consciousness will come all the virtues, power, knowledge, love, joy, spaciousness, presence. And your only true mission is to shine that light wherever you are.
Well, I think we need to do another show because the things just keep popping up in my mind when you say something and it prompts me to another question. But I really think it's analogous to the life review in a lot of ways. If we teased a young kid on the playground as a child, then we have the experience of viscerally experiencing how downcast and despondent that kid did and how it ripples out into his life. But conversely, when we do things that we do because we know they're right and we think they're benign acts, like you said, that light can light a bunch of different lights. So listen, this has been great. How can people get a hold of you and your books if they would like to get more information?
Yes. So people can get a hold of me through my website. It's ingridhonkala.com. And my books, I have them on Amazon. I am in all the media pages, Facebook, Instagram. I have 2 YouTube channels, one ingridhonkala.com, and another one that is called is with 2 other friends. And
well, you know what? We can put it in the show notes. You just send it to me in an email. I'll put it in the show notes.
My mind is right now like with all the dying to, I don't know. My mind is blocked because I have another thought in my head. That's why.
That's okay.
It's because the beings of light said to me, live your life in a way that you do not need a live review. So
perfect.
That is just so important. But now, Mark, you can edit this piece because my mind is gone without the name of our other podcast.
That's okay. Well, yeah. And you know what? I think that is the goal, right? If we can atone in life, if we know we've transgressed against people, and I can't even count how many people I'd have to get a hold of, but the ones that I know that I alienated in relationships or in business, I've made an attempt to reach out to and offer an apology, a sincere apology, just for my immaturity. And I think we can all do that. But listen, this has been great. I'll put your information in the show notes, and we'll have your other YouTube in there.
And now I remember, in dying, I began to live.
There you go. There you go. Well, you know what? You didn't want to live. You wanted to go back. So that's why you forgot about it. You wanted to go back across.
Exactly. But it's when I realized it's not about dying. It's about living. We're eternal beings. We never die. So in dying, I began to live. Just remember, we never die.
That's a great title. Ingrid, thank you so much. And I hope to do something again with you in the near future.
Oh, thank you, Mark. Me too. Anytime, anytime. I'm so grateful to be here. And thank you. What an honor.